Okay, we're live. Welcome, welcome everyone to Goddess Vibrations, a spiritual sexual empowerment show. I'm here with my co-host Kirti, my regular guest and co-host, and we are talking about drawing the line, big, beautiful boundaries. And this was Kirti's idea. And I feel like, Kirti, we should give everybody a little reminder of what it is that you do, just in case this is one of the first times that they're tuning in or they haven't been here in a while.
Yeah, sure. So sorry, I just saw my computer do something there. So my name is Kirti. Hello, everybody. It's always a pleasure to be here and to be with y'all. And what I do is I move energy through the body, and it's for the sake of self-love and raising awareness of the divine masculine and feminine in all of us. And my preferred way of moving energy is dance and rewilding and exposing who we truly are beneath the surface. And so sometimes that asks us to explore shadow and explore the other sides of ourselves that we have been trained to numb or keep quiet. And so I look to do that in all sorts of ways. Dance is my preferred way. And I also do it through the arts, like poetry and visual arts and dance and drum, and storytelling is one that's been emerging for me, is using storytelling to retell old stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I can't help but notice as you're talking about rewilding how wild the weather is today. And it was yesterday. This is rare for San Diego that we've had whipping winds. And to me, it feels like the divine feminine is stirring and it's starting to rise up. And we were just talking before we went live about this full moon rising, the full moon coming on Thursday, and some of the energies that we're already starting to feel with that. And I feel like, both of us, our work is very aligned with the divine feminine and bringing that forward. You're working more with the body. I'm working more with the emotions, although we both are crossing over. And it's very much rooted, as you pointed out, in social justice as well as sacred sexuality. So here we are meeting together on this show, and we seem to have endless topics to explore. So, and like the thing I thought of too, when we talk about boundaries, is I feel like as women, a lot of times we're breaking boundaries or we're breaking down barriers, but then also that wild energy can go too far, maybe. And we need to maybe put some self boundaries on that, but also, and maybe more so, I think with women, it's about setting up boundaries to protect our space or to protect our energy or to protect our resources. So I don't know what comes up for you when
I think that's a beautiful. We want to always understand the equal and opposite meaning of everything, right? So yes, boundaries are there to keep people out, and boundaries are also to keep us safe. And sometimes we are told, boundaries and walls are also different, right? Walls sometimes don't allow us to see over. It completely blocks your vision or your sight, whereas a boundary can be something just like a piece of tape or a line in the sand. And it's just something that is a visual thing. So how we separate ourselves to protect ourselves, that's really a big important question when we're talking about boundaries, is what type of boundary am I wanting to create? Sometimes we do feel like we want to build a wall, and sometimes it's like, oh, I just want to draw a line in the sand, like, yeah, just need to step back a little bit, like just move back. And sometimes it's like, let me put up this wall, like, and you need to not know I even exist anymore. So we want to get clear with what type of boundary wants to come up. Because if we can understand what type of boundary wants to come up, we can understand the extent to what we're protecting.
And how to do it. Like you said, there's different types. And it made me think of this astrology report that I was listening to earlier by Ann Ortley. It's on iTunes podcast. And I like it because it's pretty short. She usually is about 30 minutes once a week. And she said, now is a time to reconnect with the people you don't talk to. And so if there's somebody that you purposely don't talk to and you want world peace, like go call them up or like message them and be like, hey, what's up? And you don't have to, and this is where boundaries come in, because you don't have to be their best friend. You don't have to have them over for dinner. You don't have to like allow them into your life per se, but just at least open up that connection and say, hey, how are you? And show that kind of brotherly, sisterly love. And so I thought that was really interesting. So I was thinking about people, who have I lost touch with, or who don't I talk to anymore? Who might I just reach out and say, hey,
yeah. Did you do any of that?
Not yet. But I mean, I will. I thought of like, you know, a couple names. And of course, you don't want to reopen maybe not that you don't want to reopen toxic relationships, but you have to be really cautious, I think, if you're going to reach out.
Totally. And remember, we talked about this like at our last ritual together about this, the Capricorn discernment is such a gorgeous skill for that reason, right? Like Capricorn decides on their boundaries and decides on their level of involvement based on where they feel grounded. And I love that quality, because it makes so much sense, where it's like, oh, okay, I feel grounded here. So because I feel grounded, I can make a wise decision. And I can discern, instead of like, you can try to make a decision where if you don't feel grounded, your decisions are not going to come from a place of where you feel wise from your experience, but they're going to come from places of fear or projected fear from outside of you, which kind of leads to why I even wanted to bring up this topic, because last week it was MLK's birthday. And I was kind of, you know, in this place where I'm like, this is interesting. Like, we are still continuing to celebrate our civil rights leaders, and we still are taking 1 month out of the year to say Black people matter, which to me is hilarious, because it's like, why do we need 1 month? It should be every day. Every single day we should be honoring the indigenous, and we should be honoring all of our ancestors on this land. But the more we use education to divide and conquer, and to only talk about divide and conquering instead of all the places where we're coming together historically and presently, I feel like it's a little bit of a dangerous way. And so that's kind of where this boundaries topic extended for me, where it was like, well, if you make boundaries where you feel grounded, it's called discernment, wisdom. When you make boundaries from a place where you almost feel like a wildfire and you're not grounded and you're blazing, you know, it's called avoidance and fear. And I wonder, you know, when I think about our own politics, and I know for me, there's like politics and pussy politics. And it's almost like patriarchy, and then, you know, we're unwinding the patriarchy and the pussy politics. And I wonder, what do our pussies feel about the types of shifts and changes we've made historically, politically? Like, how does our divine feminine actually feel about the fact that we are celebrating Martin Luther King's birthday? And we know that there's still so much discrepancy going on the planet, and that we're still celebrating Martin Luther King's birthday when we know that there are a plethora of powerful Black people to be celebrated. And yes, Martin Luther King should be celebrated. And we also know, like, Martin Luther King was killed by his doctor. Like, all these stories came out about him literally being murdered by the United States government. And we don't get to hear all these choices. So for me, as the public, like, my pussy wants to yell out, where do we draw the line in terms of what we are exposed to and what we're not exposed to? Because as a woman, it has been a very challenging process to come into my power and realize, like, oh, wait a minute, I can do that. You told me I couldn't, but I can do that. And now I'm coming into this place with the news and media and information and like, we have all this bipartisan politics going on, where it's like, okay, hey, maybe you can say that is a theory about Martin Luther King. It's not facts, even though we have the doctor on the recording saying that that was what he was asked to do. Okay, well, break it down for us, all of us. Just like we just like we mass air, you know, all the Martin Luther King breakfasts, also mass air the research that's being done, like to figure out what really happened with this assassination. And the fact that somebody was put, an innocent white man was put in jail and took the blame for Martin Luther King's assassination. So that's like my thing with like, where do we draw the line? You know, and I don't know if it's clear, the piece about pussy politics and politics. But for me, it's like, I want to know everything.
Yeah. Well, you're tapping into some themes from last week's show too, because I interviewed John Conyers III, who's the son of the longest serving Black congressman. He passed away last year, but he ran for vice president in the 70s, and he was the dean of the House. And so he was very good friends with MLK Jr. And then so he shared on the show some stories, and he said his dad was, first of all, I said, how did your dad stay in Congress that long and fight for so long? Because he fought for MLK Day to be a holiday for 15 years before, because he immediately, as soon as he got assassinated, he was like, he wanted to commemorate his birthday. And he didn't want it just to be the first Monday. He wanted it to be his actual birthday. That was really important to him. And I said, how did your dad have the tenacity or the whatever, you know, to get through it? And he's like, well, first of all, he's a Taurus. And I'm like, oh, say no more. I get it. A Taurus myself. But, you know, Taurus and Capricorn. So you're talking about this Capricorn energy as well. So MLK is a Capricorn, John Conyers Jr. is a Taurus, and together they were doing a lot of work for this social justice. So when I'm talking to John, you know, we both agreed that any oppressed group should really be fighting for every oppressed group. You know, it's nonsense. So I think when we're talking even about drawing the line with that, like in pussy politics, it's like every woman should be fighting for Black people, for Indigenous people, be voting for their best interests. And every Black person should also be voting for women's best interests and LGBT, you know, best interests. And it's like, once we figure this out, the majority of the population has been oppressed in some way, which I know you know, because you teach a class on racism, classism, all of these different things. And I mean, we could really change the world, but what I believe, the reason why this hasn't happened and why we're so divided politically when we have rampant patriarchy and misogyny and these things happening, is because if you have not set that boundary with toxic masculine in your own family, you can't do it anywhere else. And this is what I talked about with John too, is if you haven't stood up to that racist uncle or that racist whatever in your own family, you're not going to be able to do it with your boss, your neighbor, your friend, whoever else. And so, because she's saying, why don't people say something? And I've heard so many stories, I've witnessed it, where like some terrible joke or awkward comment has been made, and everybody's kind of like freezing, like, whoa, what just happened? But why isn't it like, hey, fucker, like, what are you saying?
What are you doing?
Yeah, like draw the line. That's drawing the line. But most people are not willing to put their neck out and shake and rattle, because they haven't done that in their own families. And if you haven't had the balls, ovaries or testicles, whichever balls you own or both, to do that in your own family, you're not going to be able to do it. So that's the work. It's like doing it in our own family. So where are you drawing the line? And that's where I like to go with people, is start with that racist dad or racist uncle or misogynist or whatever, and just say, hey, that comment is not cool with me. And then how do you draw the line? Like one way is verbally, but also you have to follow up with action. And so one way I did this, and I want to point out that the toxic masculine is not always in a male body. It's oftentimes in a female body. And I was meeting with one of my spiritual channels this week, and she said, you know, I've seen more excess masculine energy in mothers than anyone else on the planet.
Oh yeah.
And I said, especially modern day mothers, it's like you're forced. You're working, you're protecting, you're breadwinner, like all of it. It's like, it's really exhausting. But you know, in my family, when I had to set that boundary with, it was mainly the women in my family. And I said, hey, this is the conversation that I'm not going to tolerate. I have my two little bambinos now. If you start talking that mess in front of them, like, I'm going to walk out. I still love you, but you have to know how those conversations, and a lot of it is religious shaming and, what you should do this and you need to do this and all of that. And I said, I'm going to just walk out. And if you want a relationship with us, then you're going to have to put that in check, because I won't tolerate it. And so I gave the verbal warning, and then had to follow up with action when it was crossed. The boundary was crossed. So then there's the blocking on Facebook and all of this stuff. And again, it's like, I love you, but that can't happen here. So, and that's the other thing that Anne Ortley was saying astrologically too, is that it's about inviting in the shadow, inviting in that toxicity. We so badly want to be like, oh, get away from me, and like cast it away aggressively. But she's like, invite it in the same way you'd invite your shadow self and say, here's a comfortable place for you to have a conversation. Let's talk. And then, okay, it's time for you to go now. That sort of thing, with love. Send them away with love.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that practice. Yeah. I think too, getting really clear with the feeling, that understanding what you're feeling. Like, the more you do work around your emotions and understanding what emotion you're feeling, it's going to be really helpful, because when you want to shift a feeling from one state to another, you just go to the opposite side of it. Most of the time, we're not trying to shift. We're not trying to shift from, joy to sadness, but oftentimes what makes that shift happen, you want to pay attention to that. Like, oh, that thing made me just go ahead and shift. And that, I feel like when we get aware of the seed emotion or the root emotion of what we're feeling, then we can get very clear with what is the primal need here, right? Like, if I'm feeling fear, well, I need protection. If I'm feeling anger, I'm actually craving joy, but something that I'm not creating a boundary with is shifting my desire to feel joy to an feeling of anger. And if we were able to see one as equal to the other, there's just a scale. And it's not that we never want to feel the anger or the fear or the sadness. No, we have to feel that, so that, right, we can feel the other things, just like we have to experience the new moon to feel the full moon, and day and night. They're both shades of the same color, and they actually reveal the beauty. If we just had monochromatic paintings all day, I mean,
right,
sure, it'd be cool, but we like value, we like tints, we like hues, we like shades. And same thing with people, right? I mean, we crave biodiversity as a necessity for growth.
right.
So we want to really get clear on that. And when you get clear with your primal need, which is usually, hunger, sleep, or for me, it's usually physical touch, or just,
I was going to say, sex has got to be in there somewhere, at least for most of the
need of just, like needing that, whatever. I don't know what to call it, because I wouldn't want anyone who's like, I don't crave sex, I must not have that. It's like, no, it can be any type of just closeness and physical, like tribal. The same thing that, when your mama put you as a newborn onto her chest, that type of nurturing and care. It's usually one of those things, and when we can get clear with that being a primal need, then we can start to move up into the limbic and neocortex, or up into some more of the heart energy with feeling and unconditional. Because really, when you get clear with that root emotion, so let's say, recently I have something that just happened to me today that I could use as an example. We could kind of just practice this protocol. And I think it relates to what you were talking about, like invite it in, right? So, there's a deal. I'm involved with a collaboration that involves property, and we work differently. Me and my partner work differently in the property and how we manage. And I'm seeing that there are some systems and structures that I would also like to improve, in terms of like, come on, let's all get real, receipts and costs and tracking and, just doing what is required to really honor your business. I'm really working through those systems and streamlining and trying to get better at that.
Mhm.
And so I'm seeing that come up in both of my businesses, right? One with this property and also with my personal business with movement medicine and energy work. And so my partner and the property is reflecting to me that that's what's needed. And I said, oh yeah, and here I'm collaborating with them because I'm thinking we're partners. So I'm just being real with where I'm at. Like, yeah, man, I'm working on that. And then the conversation flipped to like feeling like I was an employee
Mm.
to this partner.
Mhm.
And wow, thank God for the work
Mhm.
because I was able to immediately feel like red flag, red flag. Like I felt my body temperature shift immediately. And I was like, oh, I'm, that, this is weird. Like 7 a.m. and I'm getting a text like outlining demands of things that I haven't. And I was like, whoa, whoa. And then it just became like, oh, this is an expectation because you're expected to. I was like, whoa, I thought we were just like, yeah, of course I will, handle it. Like we're in partnership. This is feeling, this conversation is not how I want to be spoken to, nor how I choose to collaborate with people that I work with anymore.
Mhm.
Actually, that is done. And so divine, because I am so done with that, because I'm actually working to create other partnerships that don't involve that type of communication, divine was like, here, let me bring this to you in a very personal setting and see how you do. You've been practicing and you've been practicing and you've been practicing. And the more you practice, you fine tune your skills. And so I was able to like, oh, immediately feel like, oh, this is coming up for me. And what am I feeling? Ooh, I'm feeling a fear of getting fired,
Mm.
even though I'm in a partnership.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
was like, this is interesting. So it brought up all this old past
Mhm.
stuff for me of like working for someone, them not accepting the way I work, and not accepting who I am. And it brought up all of these things. And I was like, whoa. And I could have easily tucked back away and just been like, oh man. But really, I was like, but I'm not that. I'm
Mhm.
actually really responsible. I'm organized. I'm running 3 programs right now. I have this docket of this consulting and I'm doing this and I'm managing and I'm actually bills are getting paid. Like, so that's actually not my story.
Mhm.
This is somebody's story of me
Mhm.
based on what they're navigating. And
Mhm.
that created some really beautiful empathy because I was able to take what was in my root, what was my primal need of like feeling reassuring myself that I'm not a failure of sorts and that I'm not going to lose my stability and my house and my money and I'm not going to like lose this opportunity, like my life isn't going to fall apart. And to just really say like, oh, actually I'm feeling that to reassure myself of where my life is together.
Mm.
And I got clear that I'm not interested in that collaboration actually. I actually did it out of obligation because I wanted to help somebody in need.
Mm.
And if we're not in alignment, like, why am I giving something and putting energy into an empty well that's
Yeah.
actually causing fear when what I really want to feel is support? And
Mhm.
I'm feeling support in all these other areas of my life. So I quickly responded with, go ahead and sell.
Mhm.
And that I would have never have made that choice in the beginning. But I got to sit back and really think about this, what was happening, and out of a place of feeling grounded. So I had to think of all the other areas in my life where I feel grounded, where this person, where it's occurring for me that I'm unstable. I'm unstable and oh, I don't know how to run my finances and this is loose and I'm not being organized with that. And like I had to really get clear and be like, wait, where am I doing that though? Where am I showing up with my finances? Where am I showing communication? And I was like, wait, in the majority of the other areas of my life,
Mhm.
oh, it's because this doesn't excite me.
Yep.
And why am I going to put my energy in something that doesn't excite me? So where do you draw the line and where are you doing things out of obligation that
Mhm.
don't really excite you? So for me that was huge. And like this is a small event today that I took the time to process and I have to say I feel really free about it and I feel carefree and it feels like I'm honoring who I am. So what I'm learning is like, the more you draw the line according to your alignment, it's like a power begins to build inside of you. That's this ultimate manifestation power to create what you're truly born to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you keep flexing your boundaries and you allow more, like, it's almost like busy work of your energy, like you can do it, but it's not like, doesn't make you stoked to live life. It doesn't turn you on. It doesn't make you want to get into bed with it.
Mm.
Like, you're expelling lots of energy that's not, that takes away from your manifestation power of really calling in what is truly meant for you.
For sure. Yeah. In the book, The Big Leap, Gay Hendricks talks about your zone of competence versus your zone of genius. But it reminds me of, and that was a thought that helped me take that leap into part-time employment, part-time business to like full-time business. It's like, okay, am I ready to be in my zone of genius? Because working in the public school system, I wasn't allowed to work in my zone of genius. They didn't want that medicine, you know? So, but that's what worked, and that's what I was good at, and that's where my passion was. And so it's like moving into that, and I totally resonate with what you're saying. And there's so many times where people have approached me too with collaborations, like do this or let's do this. And really it was like, they have an idea and they want me to take care of all the details. And I'm like, oh man, you're talking to the wrong person. Like I'm like running a household. I got 2 little ones. I got a million schedules. I'm like, nah, I don't want to take care of anybody else's details. I was a social worker for the first 2 years. I was like the worst social worker ever. I think it was like trying to get people to, you know, to get diapers and get them hooked up on systems and programs. And I'm like, man, this is work. Like I do not want to be doing other people's like awful errands. Like that's what it felt like. But I enjoyed, you know, the heart to heart conversations in between.
The service too, right? Like supplying people with the need that they have. And that's the thing, a lot of us who are here to be in service, which I definitely think you and we have that in common. We tend to not understand that concept of boundaries because it feels so good. And it feels so good to be of service. I remember growing up in my family business, like there would be days I'd work 16 hours. I would work 16 hours on my feet, cooking, serving people, and just I'm like being, you know, owner, cook, plumber, waitress, like trainer, just all of it. And then like on my way home, I'd be like, man, I love being in service. Like, yeah, it was some hard work, but it feels so good to have like put healthy food in people's bellies and put money supporting staff and their families, and like just like being creative with recipes. And at the time I had like a yoga and dance studio next door to the restaurant that I had opened up. So then I also like would take 2 or 3 hours out of my day and I could teach and train. And like, it was just awesome. Like I was very busy, but I was in service and it felt so good. And so I think that a lot of times when we're thinking about where we draw the line, we have to make sure that we're drawing the line based on our own inner awareness of what is our abundance scale. Because you might draw the line being like, oh, well, this is what they say. You know, I just had a session before you and she was talking about kicking out a man because he never paid rent. And I said, oh, wow. I said, well, what did he provide? She said, oh, well, you know, he took care of the kids. My kids loved him. And, you know, he made sure dinner was done, laundry was done, and all of the other stuff was done, but he just didn't pay rent. I said, oh, well, and how are you doing that? She's like, I'm miserable. Well, you know, that's so interesting that where you drew the line. Well, she drew the line because her best friend who's dealing with, you know, the same issue with her partner is looking at her being like, oh, he doesn't pay rent, you need to get him out. However, it was just a projection of her friend and what her friend's truth is for her. But the truth was she had a great connection with this guy. He was doing all of the things. But what she was told was like, men need to pay rent, even though the abundance that he was offering was more than enough that made her feel full. And her job was allowing, I mean, it didn't take away from her life. But if you're drawing the line based on somebody else's recommendation, you're actually continuing wounds and patterns because you're still not listening to yourself.
Yep. I'll tell you what, when I was in a relationship with a man like that is when my business hit 6 figures. because he was taking care of things at home, you know, like he was just come in, scan the environment, see what needed to happen. And then there were times too where I went into that programming like, should I be with him? He really doesn't make much money. Like, am I going to be now pressured to be the provider for the end of time or whatever else? But then I was like, how can you be supporting the divine feminine and not recognize the domestic, like you said, abundance and tasks and all that energy that goes into managing a household and making sure the garbage is out and all of that stuff that just made my life so much easier, so I could come home and just really focus on work and focus on my clients and be nurtured myself to overflow to, you know, to my clients. And yeah, I think, you know, as women, we need to be a little bit more flexible in that area, a little bit less rigid about those stereotypical gender roles, and really take a wider lens to assess the situation.
Right. And this is that piece that you were even talking about with the wounded masculine or the toxic masculine in women. You know, sometimes it's even harsher because we've had to like change ourselves over and over again, to change ourselves to be more masculine politically to make money. So there's the feminism piece of it, and then change ourselves again to tap back into our and then tap back into chivalry so that we can feel taken care of because we're masculine as feminists all day long. It could be a crazy chaotic thing. But if we were to just take a step back and realize that everything is just truly an oscillating flexing of masculine and feminine energy that has nothing to do with feminism and misogyny, has nothing to do with that, but it actually has all to do with like creating and supporting.
Creating, supporting, sometimes you're penetrating, sometimes you're receiving, right?
Exactly, all the same. And in order to receive, you need someone penetrating, and in order to penetrate, you need someone to be receiving, right? So this play of energy that we're always dancing in is the welcoming of that shadow, because if you're not able to see both sides, you can't make big beautiful boundaries. Like without duality, you can't make big beautiful boundaries. You need to know the two sides of your number line. You need to know your equal and opposite that you're working with, and then the big beautiful boundaries come from the limitless possibilities that are inside. Because if you're living in a boundary, and just because we're working with this example right now of, oh, my man needs to make, I'm just saying my man because talking about my client today, my man needs to make, 6 figures in order for me to feel supported. Okay. And if this claim comes from your mother telling you that you got to make at least 6 figures to survive, like, where'd you get the number 6 figures? Did you do your equation, and did you do your math, and did you do all the things that you need to take care of in your life? Or was this an article that you read? Like, did you actually get into the details of your life, right? Because then it's 0 figures and 6 figures. Okay, fine. Let's work with that. Let's work with that dualistic. Anytime we're in a dualistic mind state, we are definitely walking the egoic path, because we are seeing that there is a right and there is a wrong, right? Now, when we want to go into higher self-consciousness, and when we want to tap into the collective, we want to take that dualistic approach, and we want to say, remix, bring it back. And we want to take the old, and we want to take the new, we want to take the dualistic, and we want to innovate, and we want to get real. We're like, oh, wait a minute. Actually, if he made 50,000 before he even hit 100, if I was open to meeting a partner who made 50,000 and they were also able to like support and supplement my business, like, could I quantify like what I need in my business, and could they serve and support me in that way, where like I'm not purging my business by like hiring someone I might not trust, but I could like bring in my partner if that's his quality? Or where are my partner's gifts where they could support and supplement? Like, it's all in the remix. It's all in the remix. The remixes are the best. Like, talk to any artist, they will tell you their best shit comes from the mistakes. The best dance moves came from falling and getting back up and being like, oh shit, that was cool. You know what I'm saying? The best dance moves have come from taking classical technique and flipping the shit out of it. It's like, we wouldn't even have Wi-Fi. That's a remix of communication.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, all the versions of the phones and on our outfits and how we present. Look at again, biodiversity. It's all about the remix. If everything was one color, it'd be different.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be different. So we always want to take that non-dualistic approach, and we want to create big, beautiful boundaries from the limitless possibilities. So you always want to know, like, okay, well, where are my equal and opposite terms here? And so when we work with the body, you know, like plank is a great example of this, right? Plank, you ground your hands and you ground your feet right into the ground. You got your toes in, your feet are folded, and you have your hands planted in the ground. This is a beautiful plank pose. And you always will hear, you know, your yoga teacher or your fitness trainer will say, you know, they always pay attention to the hips. Drop your hips, or hey, lift your hips and don't let them sag down.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Well, you have your equal and opposite, your feet and your hands. Your body is the limitless possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to get that beautiful structure and plank, you got to go to all the equal and opposite points. So if my hands are down, the complete equal and opposite, the equal point is my feet. My feet and my hands are equally pressing into the earth. Then I want to think, what is my opposite point? Well, from my hands, the opposite point is between my shoulder blades. So if I'm pressing down with my hands, I'm going to press up with my shoulder blades. Okay, I'm pressing down with my feet. I'm going to lift up with my heels and engage my kneecaps, because that helps lift my legs up as I'm pressing down with my feet. That immediately creates limitless possibility, because your body is going to straighten out. And then you'll say, oh, wow, I'm pulling back from my heels. So that means I want to pull forward with my head. Now, when you get equal tension,
Mm-hmm.
equal tension of all body parts, you have balance.
Mm-hmm.
And from that place of balance, we get our downloads in our body, and our body actually is releasing.
Mm-hmm.
It's releasing. It's releasing. That's why in movement medicine, you know, I'm always like, expand and contract, expand and contract, you know, shake, release, body scan, right? These are ways for us to play with the equal and opposite, to see where are we landing in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Because your big, beautiful boundary is not going to be my big, beautiful boundary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. And I thought of too, as I was listening to you, is that balance is almost like the point of creation too. I
Mm.
kind of like weightlessness, just picturing myself in that plank, you know, making all those adjustments. Now it's become so much easier. There's no weight on my joints. It's just holding that pose and feeling empowerment, really feeling that place of creation empowerment.
Mm. Mm.
And then also with big beautiful boundaries, I think assessing the whole situation. So you're saying if you're in this duality, it's a problem. And I think it's a problem if you're attached, right, to one or the other.
Yeah.
But if you can kind of rise above and hold them both and see them both and be non-attached and non-judgmental about them both, even the evil, like good and evil, you know, it's like it's evil, but it doesn't mean that God is punishing. It's just that there's good and there's evil. And so how
Right.
is that, you know, flowing through? And we recognize that bigger picture and then place ourselves, let's say in a relationship, you and I both know that if you're not aware of those boundaries and doing that full assessment of a person in the beginning, it doesn't matter how much money they make or you make, because it could all be gone. Because if you can't trust them, it's gone. And then what, you know?
Ah.
So doing that assessment of like, what, you know, what do I bring? What do they bring? Where is this a healthy dynamic? You know, if I'm here, my partner's here, where's our balance point, right? that
Mhm.
that we can be in our power and feel that power and feel that balance. But you know, if you're this giver and this nurturer, like we both are, and many people, many healers are, and you don't figure that out, you don't have that discernment, you don't draw those lines, um, then you're going to attract the parasitic folks, and they will come. Because if you don't enforce the lessons, just like in astrology. You have this inner turmoil. If you don't handle it, whether it's the shadow or whatever you want to call it, if you don't handle it, it's going to manifest in your outer environment and come to you as an event, that you have to handle. And so if you're not handling those boundaries, that's that person. It's going to come to you in a person that's going to be like, hey, I'm here to, help you work on these boundaries. Of course, you're going to be sexually attracted to them because you're supposed to work on that issue. So it's
right.
universe, like bringing you together. And yeah, so that's how, I do a lot of work with people leaving narcissists, healing from narcissistic relationships. And it's very, very deep work, and it's very like layered, and it takes a long time to shift that pattern, because it's a very deep pattern that, goes back to some of these things. And sure, some people get lucky and they meet a wonderful, amazing person right after they just got the narcissist or the fourth narcissist or whatever out of their life. That does happen. But there's also, this underlying pattern sometimes. And I feel like when you are a giver and then you meet another giver, it's beautiful. But you can give freely because because you've already had the boundary, assess the boundary that person is capable of giving back. So it frees you to give. But if you don't know that person can give back, then you're not free to give. And I think, that's one thing I experienced when we went to Tulum, is a group of 6 givers, like how beautiful that was and how nurturing it was and how easy it was just to get things done, because everybody was willing to give and just keep giving. And one person would give and another person would give more. And then, it just spiraled. I never felt depleted.
And a beautiful piece of folks who are givers and are so willing to give is that, especially if it's coming from a place that out of trust, right? You're giving not to, for seeking approval or to be liked, but you're giving because you trust that with this giving, all is well, and that you will be taken care of regardless if you receive back. That's the tough part, right? And the same thing with when you're creating these big, beautiful boundaries, is like, you've got to be willing to trust that, like, when you put this boundary down, because you are stepping into honoring a place that's feeling shaky for you, and you're using your discernment, that if you need to trust that if that relationship falls away, you will be okay.
Yep.
And all is well. And perhaps this rejection is a redirection, or it's just not a match right now for where you're at. It doesn't mean it's gone forever. Whatever the relationship, the job opportunity, the gig, the partnership, romance, hook up, whatever opportunity that you feel is quote unquote missed, it's not missed at all if you are acting from a place of your alignment. Because when you're in a place of alignment, you're in the place of trust. Yes. Divine's got your back.
Yes, trust. And I know you and I have talked about that as a theme in the past, and that probably should be a future show. What did you call it? Rejection is redirection.
Redirection.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends who are on dating apps, they come to me for a lot of advice on like, how do you, I've helped a couple friends meet great guys on their dating apps. And a big part of it is like, look at the things that men are rejecting you for, that you feel men are rejecting you for, and redirect that into, that's your huge, largest asset. And then before you know it, you start to weed out the fact of who you're seeking approval from in the dating world. And you start to actually realize that the things that people are telling you that they don't like about you is actually the very things that make you who you are, that you need to present and flaunt and own. For example, I had a client who would not put up a video her working out, because she felt like she was overweight and it wasn't like sexy, or it, like guys don't want to see that, like I'm not in shape or whatever. And then she put up a video recently. She's telling me of doing deadlifts, and she immediately got a message that said like, I got to take you off the market.
Oh, wow.
Like a woman that's so like would be willing to just show like that was a huge turn on. Like, I love your energy. And I just Like I love that shit. You know,
Yeah,
it's like the
that's
things that
awesome.
you think society makes us feel, or it occurs for us that it's like our biggest faults. It's
Mhm.
actually your biggest set.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I think I lost track of what we were talking about.
Well, it reminds me of some of like the business training and the branding and stuff like that too, because they'll take you through different things that should be in your presentation or your profile. And one of the things is your quirks. They're like, what are your quirks? Like, be open about that. Come out of the closet, because that's what draws people to you. It makes you interesting. It makes you unique. That's your thing. And that's who you are. So I love that.
Yes.
Re,
Um, I do have like a little tool that we use, Shofar and I use with our um, some of our couple clients and some of our singles who come up on the table about creating boundaries, and let's call them big, beautiful boundaries. I love that.
Mhm.
Um, and I would love to, it's a really quick check-in to offer your listeners
Mm.
if it's the time to do that right now, or of course if we go into discussion, but
Yeah.
if you want that process, I'll totally share
Yeah,
it with you by
let's do
when we
it.
close
And I
out.
want to share some comments too. Nikita is chiming in, and she was saying truth. When you're talking about rejection and redirection, she's saying truth, staying present to the situation, trust and alignment. Where are our intentions and shadow intentions? So, yeah, she just
Yeah, very good
validating what you
question.
had to say. I am still blurry. I reached to get a drink of water, and now I'm blurred out, and I might not return until the
Yeah, it's like
end of the
this is
show.
your webcam, huh?
It's my webcam. I don't know why it does that.
I like a Z snap it. Go.
Yeah, I'm like, get back with the program. Literally. Okay, it doesn't matter. You're in the spotlight right now. Teach us this technique.
Yeah. Okay. That maybe that's what it is. It's like it's just showing us like this is now the
Okay,
person.
fade out.
Fade it out. Fade it out. Okay. So this protocol, we call this the self-aligned um, battery, and it's a self-aligned. It's really like a self-aligned action battery. It's a double A battery, if you want to think of it that way, an aligned action battery. And the reason why we like the term battery is one of our coaches used it, and this is not how our coach used it, but of course, like that's the way we thought. We're like, oh, the word battery, trip out on the word battery, and it's like a battery has a positive and a negative charge,
Mhm.
right? And not one is better or less or worse than the other. They're both needed to create a circuit of energy and flow. And so this is exactly what has to happen within us in the energy work as well. But outside of the energy work, when you're not on your bed or on the table doing breath work and practicing going into deep meditation or hypnosis, and you're just you're walking, and let's say you're in the grocery store and you're just like, oh shit, I'm at a conundrum. I need to make a boundary, or I need to figure something out. Do I buy this? Do I eat this? Do I go out with this person? Do I give them my number? All these types of questions that we have for ourselves. You can go into an aligned action battery. And what that is it's literally a dance between the masculine and the feminine. And they're playing almost like hot potato or catch with your issue, but it's your own divine masculine and feminine. And why we do this work is that when you do it with yourself enough times, when you get into partnership, then you start to do it with your mate.
Mm.
And you decide which one is in the masculine role and which one is in the feminine role
Mhm.
with your partner. But first, I really encourage everybody to do this. Of course, that's always my thing. Do it for yourself first, and then beam in the partnership to do the same for you. So this is what we would say. So like, for example, let's see. Okay, we can talk about even my partnership with this property piece, right? Like, I had to make this decision. Like, do I pull out of this deal?
Mhm.
And it's a personal connection. Do I pull out of the deal? Do I pull out of this working relationship that we've been in, that I've kind of been in out of obligation? Do I stay in or do I leave? And what I know that I want is, like, I want to feel valued in my partnerships, in my working relationships. And so I'm pretty clear. So When you have a desire or a want, that's the masculine energy speaking. Okay, it's trying to activate that, and it wants action. So I want to make more money. I want to get healthier. I want to open the relationship. I want to be allowed to flirt with people but not have sex with them. You know, any of your wants. I want to eat cake 5 times a week. That's a desire of mine. So your masculine, whatever want, we let your desires come through. This is also, that's beyond the masculine and feminine. That's the inner child work. You know, it's just like, what is the desire? Boom. Okay, it's here. My kid wants this. It's a desire. Your masculine, which is kind of like your father. Think of your father personally. Your father energy is going to want to create that need to come to life for you. And the mother energy is going to create how the process in which that need is going to be attracted to you. So if you have a issue, like there was mine with this thing, but now all of a sudden my issue's changing, and I feel like what might be more alive for people is, let's just talk about the flirting one, because that's a little bit more exciting, and I've done that one before.
Yeah.
And so for sake of time, I can boom that.
Yeah.
So for example, you know, I want to be able to have friendly relationships with men where I can flirt, and my partner is not triggered. So that's a desire for me. Like, I feel like I'm limiting myself, that I'm not allowed to openly flirt, or I feel like I'm not allowed to openly flirt or just be friendly, like smile and have a good time with a guy friend. Doesn't mean I want to sleep with him, doesn't mean anything. But if I'm dating a guy, like I want my guy to be okay with that like I have lots of guy friends and I hang out with lots of guy friends. I dance with guys. Doesn't mean that there's romance involved, but I just want to be able to be myself. And if my partner or my lover at the time thinks that that's flirting, I don't really care. I just want to be able to do whatever I do. You can label it what you want, but I'm not going to change how I act. Like, that's a pretty clear feeling for me. I want that. So I'm going to say, like, I want that. I really want that for myself. And so now it'll go into my feminine's court, my feminine energy, and she'll say, okay, I hear you, King. I hear what you want, that you want to be able to have like deep friendships where you can be who you want without me getting triggered. Okay, I understand that desire. Like, how can I make this happen where you can have friendly relationships with men, and not only is your man not triggered, but also the men that you're having friendly relationships with aren't triggered and want to sleep with you because you're being so friendly? Because that's what I see happening. That's what my feminine says back to me immediately. She's like, you know, and I'm only going to give them gender roles because I think of them as my mother and father. And, you know, and this is about reparenting. So they're my desired parents. These are my desired parents conversations, not the ones that I was necessarily raised with. But if I was a parent reparenting my own child, they would be having this conversation. So my feminine is like, well, I really want you to have these relationships with your guy friends. But one, you know, we have to figure out how to do it so that your current lover is not jealous. And two, so that the guy friends that you're hanging out with, you know, are okay with you being friendly with them and not sleeping with them, because that tends to come up. Okay, so this is how it can happen. So I have to go, when my feminine gets the desired request from the masculine, my feminine has to go into a meditative state and has to go into energy work, has to go into hypnosis, has to go into emotion, has to go into healing, and has to go into like, where's the wounding that's there, that's like coming up, that's not letting me already do that. So that's why it's a desire in the first place, because you're holding back from it. So you need to take your time in your feminine energy. Like, how am I going to create that? How am I going to create the ability to be friends and like da 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 da? So I meditated on that. And as I was meditating on it, guess what? I was having really interesting conversations with my father and my brother that were giving me lots of insight. Oh, interesting. Having conversations with these men. And they just started popping up. And then before I knew it, one day I woke up and it's like, oh my God, it's there. So it wasn't like a quick. It was just like, oh, I have to meditate on this. And then my feminine came up with a whole like thing of what I needed. And it was like, okay, well, in order for me to continue to have these relationships that my masculine wants, I I need to come up with an agreement with my current lover that expresses this desire and make sure that he feels comfortable and knows that like I don't want to be with any of these other men. They're my friends. And then also I need to be able to have open and honest conversations with every single guy friend I have right now, that I am looking to develop strong, deep relationships with men that don't involve sleeping with them. And I need to be able to say that to my guy friends, and my guy friends that stick around. Okay. And I need to be okay with the ones that don't stick around.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to affect my current relating with my partner who really loves being with me. And I really want to be with them. Okay. That's what I need, king. And so then my king says, oh, queen, I hear you. I hear what you need in order to feel safe and supported in having these relationships with men. I hear you. So this is where these big, beautiful boundaries come in. Because now my king energy, my own king energy, goes and listens and honors the queen's request. Says, my queen needs to be able to let the current lover know. So, how can I create a structure and a system that's going to allow my present primary partner, lover, know that I'm fully committed to him right now? What could be that structure? Well, I want to have this conversation with him. Maybe that needs to be another battery. I need to have the conversation with my current partner of like, what allows him to feel comfortable enough? Okay, so I have to have that conversation with my partner. That's a structure. And I need to make time for that. So I need to reach out. I need to make sure I carve out time to have this conversation. Okay, now with my guy friends, let me make a list of all my closest male friends that I value their friendships so deeply. And I know that there is attraction and tension. How can I reach out to them and tell them what I'm trying to create right now? Let me make a list of them. Let me reach out to each of them and make time to have this intimate conversation and see if they're willing to join my cause. These are my big, beautiful boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody told them to me, but it's coming from inside of my king and queen, my mother and father, trying to reparent my own creativity and my own sexuality and my own sensuality and my own desire to be who I was born to be. This is me taking my primal reptilian brain and infusing it with limbic love and evolving it to neocortex vision. I am creating a new way of being. This is like integrating the masculine and feminine. So this protocol of having a conversation, letting yourself, your own mother and father, reparent your inner child desires, is a gorgeous process, because then the feminine's like, all right, king, we'll do it. Do the damn thing. Make those calls. Show up with those structures.
Mm-hmm.
Do it.
Mm-hmm.
And once you do it, guess what? Then he gets to check in. Queen, how you feeling? How's it feel?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're able to do this with your own king and queen, oh, when your lover comes through and is a representation and a reflection of your own divine king and queen relationship within yourself, don't even worry about it. Like butter. It's just like gorgeous. It's like you'll be like, do I know you from another lifetime? What the fuck is going on here? Yeah.
I think the piece, and maybe it's my bias being a marriage and family therapist too. I think the piece that I really like about your example is the conversation. Like you're having the conversation again with your inner masculine, with your inner feminine, and also your partner and these other guy friends. So it's not like I'm gonna just go ahead and start flirting with them and then have them wondering what the fuck is going on right now. But you're like, no, I'm going to enlist them, invite them to be co whatever conspirators in this growing edge, or this big, beautiful boundary of what's important to me. And if they're my close guy friends, you know, they might like to help me out with this thing. And you're giving them, it's consent, right? You're giving them consent, and you're creating consent. Again, going back to like masculine, feminine, and as women, not recreating some of these situations that we've been put in on the other side or whatever. And so I feel like that's such a big, beautiful boundary to you know, have that conversation first before having to clean it up then later, kind of thing.
Right. And you know that is beautiful because the big, beautiful boundary came from you.
Mm-hmm.
So you can feel very grounded in it. And so if somebody's not cool with that boundary, it don't phase you. It's not going to phase you. It's like, that's my rock right there. That's my ground. Like, it's like somebody fucking with your baby. You should be like, move out. You're gone. Yeah. Right. It's your baby. That's your inner child. Like, boom, like nobody's going to mess with that. Mm-hmm. And this is what's going to fuse and cultivate your continuous creativity, because your inner child is the seed of your creativity. And I guarantee when you had that multi-day Kundalini awakening, there was something you got very clear with your inner child and creativity, which is what was like, whoa, mm-hmm. I've arrived.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's definitely a felt sense, something that comes internal, you know, internal out. So absolutely. And it makes me think too about going back to that example about the dating apps. If you're mm-hmm. setting boundaries and you know, like you're jumping on there and you're like, I'm not ready for a relationship, but I just want to get comfortable with flirting, or I want to, you know, go get comfortable being on dates and just having fun, or I want to get comfortable being spontaneous, or whatever it is. I think also setting that big, beautiful boundary is being authentic and honest and not afraid of being rejected. I mean, I get weird DMs. You're not on Instagram anymore, but like I get weird DMs. I just got one the other day about like,
oh gosh, what
was
it?
I was just, I didn't even know what to think of it. I was just laughing. I'm like, this can't be serious. Maybe it is, but I don't even know what to do with it. I'm just going to let it sit there. But about like a man looking for a sugar baby. And he's like, if you're not interested in it being sexual, that's okay. I'll just pay you for, you know, your attention or whatever. And I was like, why me? Like it says right in my bio, licensed marriage and family therapist, you know, like there seems like there'd be plenty of other women that you might approach for this sort of gig that, you know, isn't really my style. But I kind of like, I felt like, well, he wants something, and he just came out with it real clear. And because of that, he's eventually going to find somebody who's up for the job. You know, that person is not me, but you can't be mad at him and in the way that he asked was very polite. You know, it's like, I'm sorry if this offends you, or I hope this doesn't offend you, but you know, and so I couldn't be mad at it. I just was kind of like amused about it, like kind of like why me kind of thing is the thing that I was amused at.
Well, and then it's like the concept and the idea of like, well, I'm clearly attracting that. There's something in me that's attracting that. That used to always be my thing in the DMs where I'm like, whoa, like what is attracting? And then I realized, well, of course I'm attracting that because I'm an empowered woman who is talking about being fully expressed. And for men out there, and I can only say for the weird, because we always talk about weird DMs from men, you know, for men out there that see this openly expressed and empowered woman talking about healing sexuality and sensuality, their feminine is like, nurture me.
Right.
Heal me. I need healing. And it's true. It's like they actually really do, but we don't have space for that. And
so you gotta be like, kudos to a brother for asking to pay for that. You know what I mean? So you can't be mad at it. Like I'm like, all right, I like
right. At least he wasn't. He was he is. And there are people, you know, there are, and this is like, whoa, maybe a whole nother show's topic. You know, the whole concept of dakinis and tantrikas and like what was the real role in terms of this healing and how it became you know, this movement. Even I can only speak to it in India, but I'm sure, like, because I know we have geishas in Japan, and I think every culture has probably some sort of gathering of women that are like available to men for purchase. in all of that, it's this weird, grossly distorted, I think, version ultimately of men being healed by women sensually, and women being born really with this innate gift to heal with their sexual powers. And as women, some women are born with that naturally, and a lot of people might be like, oh, well, they don't want to. I notice working with some women, that's always like it's a thin line, because it just be like, oh, because you're like a freak or something, you're a sexual. It's like, no, I mean like gifts, like I can, and you can, and we can absorb the wounds that we feel and literally transmute them and release them out into the universe. And sometimes we can even transmute the ancestral wounds that need to be cleared, because we are willing to be in service of that way. And that's not always pretty and beautiful and pornographic and cute. It's actually quite scary. And some men would probably run out of the house when you're in full ritual mode of that. Like, it also requires a special man to be willing to receive that kind of help and receive it as help and keep it moving, and not try to own that light or that healing power. So we've got so many levels of understanding in this realm. We've only been fed this one echelon of like prostitution, sex worker. And it's like, yo, there are so many layers and levels and dynamics to human connection and healing. And it is not, it is not, and it is completely our fault that we have allowed economy and our economic system to place value on this service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's taken it, I say it's like culturally appropriating sex from women. It's like leaving the
Oh, that's deep.
Yeah, and then take just that,
and using it and just selling it for so much money, when it's like, dude,
yeah,
this is our gift. This,
exactly.
like, part of the payoff for being burned for centuries and stoned and branded and being called whore and prostitute and having girl babies freaking being killed generation and genocide for freaking decades. A part of the payoff is our gift to transmute and to feel and to up level and to be able to provide men or women who need healing and who are willing to receive it, for us to be able to give it. And yeah, it does feel like a huge appropriation when that is robbed and put into porn, and when that's robbed and put into child pedophilia, and when that is robbed and put into silly fucking idiotic pickup artist books that I keep hearing about, that they just like, just stop. You don't know. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Just stop.
Yeah.
And like, whatever women you're attracting, I'm curious.
They're playing off of women's traumas. It's those pickup artist books are all about like how to trigger a woman's trauma and get her attracted through playing on her traumas. It's sick. It's really sick, and it's subtle, because as a culture we don't recognize it until folks that are deeper or that can see the bigger picture and see beneath the layers. And I totally agree with you. And after just really doing some deep thinking, about sex work is legitimate work, and I feel like it should be legal, because then it puts the woman back in control of what she's offering. And it's not even just women, it's men too. I was talking to as when I was single, like another single woman friend who we've both been single for a long time, and it's like, can you imagine, like, we have physical needs, we have sexual needs, can you imagine like actually having somebody that you could trust, that's a professional, that is not going to damage your heart or going to like expect anything from you, but actually just show up and relieve that sexual healing or that need. And that, just like you go get a massage or whatever else, what is so wrong with that between consenting adults? It seems so healthy and appropriate when someone has the proper training in handling that very intimate, sacred space, which obviously people like you and I have from just the work that we do. We handle intimate spaces, you know, not for me, not sexually. I talk about sexuality, but, and same with you and Shafar, I know you do sexual energy work, but it's no
Right.
touching. You're not actually
Right.
creating sexual contact, but it's still some form of sex work, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
and
I
we are
mean, if women are, I mean, women are ejaculating. It's got to be something's going on. If you know, we're having to tell people to bring a change of clothes and we
yeah.
change the sheets mid-session, I mean, something's going on. I mean, for us, we, you know, that's the amazing and beautiful thing about the work that we do is it's like it blows your mind that like we're so powerful that
Yeah.
we can have an orgasm without being touched.
Right. Talk about big, beautiful boundaries right there. As women, we're built with them. It's like, you don't even have to touch us. You can just make love to our mind and
Yeah.
make us come a bunch of times that way. But yeah, it's really, you know, it's the integrity, it's the appropriateness, it's the tuning into the subtleties is where the boundaries are, and not just like, you know, rushing in. It's taking it, assessing the situation, like you said, the discernment. And going back to some of the sacred sex work, you know, that I've met both women and men that are those sexual healers, and people tend to, you know, constantly like come back, like ex-lovers keep coming back, and it's like wanting to tap in with them because they don't even know that they're seeking healing, you know, but it's like that's their oasis. They're like, oh, okay, I'm going to go drop in with this
Hmm.
person. And then at a certain point, even though you're very fond of this person, you can still start to objectify them. You're still kind of subtly objectifying them because you're coming to them for healing that you don't even realize you're
Right.
coming to them for. And then you're not,
Mhm.
it's not a reciprocal relationship unless that healer type is getting off on being the teacher or whatever else, or the healer,
Right.
you know, then that's their own thing. But yeah, it's really interesting, and it brings me back to the movie Dangerous Beauty. Have you seen that
Oh,
movie?
yeah.
Yeah. So Nikita, when you first started talking about this topic, Nikita said, "Deja vu, LOL, this topic." And last time I hung out with Nikita, we watched that.
Oh, yeah.
Nikita and Steffi and I watched that movie, and we're like, "Whoa!" You know, just it always brings up so much, and you get to see the different layers of, you know, like the courtesans, and how that was them owning that piece of them was actually a better chance of happiness than being stuck in these oppressive marriages that.
And a side note, which is interesting, is a lot of the courtesan movement, you know, and the women who would eventually become a part of the royal court of courtesans, a lot of them, that was their choice. They made that choice. It was actually very empowered choice. But the women who made that choice, a lot of times it was from a wounded place of their lover. Like they're like, fine, I'll just give my body to the king.
Mm,
And so this is what was really interesting at this dynamic where if this sex work that we're talking about, this sexual healing, we need to make sure we fucking healed our own sexual wounds before you become a sexual healer for somebody else. And that was a big turning point for me. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Where I started to, oh, that was just so big for me, where when I started to realize that, like, oh my God, I could actually also recreate my wounds through sex if I'm not doing my healing.
well, it's just like healing in general, whether we're doing sexual healing or healing, you know, even as a therapist, you're in your master's program, you're actually, I don't know if it's actually, I think it's throughout the program, anytime you have to get a certain number of hours of personal therapy. And then the whole first year, we're exploring our own family dynamics. We're drawing our own genograms of 3 generations of our family and looking at the, you know, things, and every paper we're exploring our own family dynamics. It's like you have to, and some people don't make it through the program because they're not, they can't get through their shit. They got too much shit, you know, and they can't get through, they can't be healed enough to go out and heal. And so they don't pass. And so it's not just academic, it's also emotional. It's your emotional intelligence. And so I think, you know, and this is where I get off, I get a little protective sometimes about coaches and folks that go out there and they call themselves coaches, but they don't have any training, because there's a lot that goes into it. You know, to have a supervisor, to go through a process of an initiation, let's say,
Right.
to be
Yeah.
like, okay, you've done your healing, or at least enough, because we're always healing, but like enough to be ready. And then to know when to take yourself out when it's too much, when you're in over your head, is really, really important. And so, I mean, that's in every healing profession. Every healing
Yeah.
profession has those boundaries. And so, yeah, this is what we have to be aware of. And I feel like, when we're talking about past lives and things like this, we can slide into those old archetypes, right? Like we can slide into that. Maybe we were a courtesan in a past life. Maybe we were a prostitute. Maybe
Right.
we were, whatever it was. And we start acting that way. And then realizing, oh shit, no, this lifetime, I'm going to be in integrity with this. I'm going to have the boundaries. It's going to be about me. It's going to be a conscious choice, not something I'm forced into or whatever else. So I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot since I first saw that movie, which was probably about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. It's but I did, the first time I saw it, I just cried, just tears of validation of, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, as a woman. And
Oh man, yeah, that movie is super
really explored that
intense
well.
one. Yeah, and it's kind of like if you realize like, okay, well, if you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, that also means like I'm liberated if I do and I'm liberated if I don't. So why don't I just fucking do what liberates me?
Yeah,
'Cause
if you're going to be called a whore anyway, you might as well have a great time.
that's my view. I mean, that's my point of view. It's like, it's like, why am I going to do something for you and then like live a horrible, like live badly inside, and you don't really like me because it's not my authentic way. I might as well just be who I am.
Right.
And you cannot like me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, I'm definitely acting like I deal with that way better than I do. I definitely feel things, and I go through my own emotions of approval. I mean, I think it's just a part of being human. And the boundaries piece is like anytime I find myself around others where I start to question my worth, I really have to just check in to where is that coming from. And that again, it's like, God, there's so many great topics that are coming through here, but you know if you're in a place where you want to do something but something's holding you back, I would listen to that and just step back and do the battery. Let your masculine say, well, I want to do this, I want to sleep with this person. But the feminine okay, I hear you, king, calm down. I know she's fine, she's gorgeous, she's this everything you want. I hear you, king. Now, should we talk about protection? No. Should we like have a conversation about that? Because you know how you feel about I know that you won't feel weird about that. Like, should we talk about protection? Should we talk about if there's another person in their life right now because you're really feeling them? I kind of feel like I would like to know those things before I open my legs this time. King says, all right, queen, I hear you. I want to honor and respect you, because unless we're on the same team here, we're only going to create wounds. We're not going to create healing. So I'm in service to your request, queen. I will make sure that that conversation happens now. And before you know it, you're speaking to this person before you lose your cool. And all it takes is doing it once. All it takes is creating one big, beautiful, gorgeous boundary. And you're never going to go back. It feels so good.
And it's so wonderful to be able to do that right in the beginning. It just makes it so much easier. Set the tone, create the container. And honestly, for me, that's what turns me on the most, is being in that empowered state when everything's clear, when everything is like,
Oh,
I get
yeah.
to say what I want, what I need, what I require, whatever. And then I'm just like, okay, I'm ready to go now. Like I'm there's no like doubt or no like wondering or no anxiety, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's a beautiful boundary to have. And you mentioned too, you're talking about like, was it astrology? I can't remember exactly what you were talking about, because a lot of stuff's been coming up for me too, as far as like future topics and whatnot. But I am lucky enough to be the guinea pig for my friend who's going through Layla Martin's sex coaching program.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so we're on session. We just had session number 2 today. I get 10 sessions, and I'm going to do some
Oh, that's
hypnosis
awesome.
there. Yeah, so fun. And we talked about doing this long ago, and now it's happening. And so it's interesting. So I'm in a different place than I was back then, but it's just, oh,
Mhm.
it's still good. And she's just like, yeah, she's a Scorpio. She's a very psychic Scorpio and very sexually embodied woman. And she's got moon
Scorpio, let's
Scorpio.
go.
Yeah, Scorpio, moon and Scorpio. I was like,
Oh,
damn. And she's like, yeah, my birth chart basically says that I'm interested in sex, 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 and sex, and sex, and sex. And so for me to be a sex coach, it's just being at home. And she is so lovely to talk to, because no judgment anywhere. Like, I've never
oh,
quite met anybody as non-judgmental as her. And just so, and she actually does a lot of coaching on polyamorous dating or not
hmm.
monogamous dating, people that are single and just out navigating the dating world, and particularly like biological things, like what do you do if you're having multiple partners, like your pH is going to get messed up, and what to
Right.
do about.
Oh, I think I remember you telling me about this friend.
Yeah, yeah. And she's just
Yeah.
very like matter of fact. And she's like, okay, like here, do this, and here's this, and whatever else. And so anyway, she's been, and now I'm in a relationship. So so it's different. Like we're talking about different things,
Right.
and different intimacy, like emotional intimacy, and how that, combines with sexual intimacy and all of that. But she's going to be on the show next week.
Oh, awesome.
So everybody gets to meet her, and she's going to be talking about female anatomy as part of like empowerment in the pussy, because she
Oh, yes.
she loves to teach women about their anatomy so that they feel empowered, and they can feel the energy of like what all of those organs are doing and those parts are doing. And I thought, this is wonderful, because the only other folks like on the show, probably the only other person on the show that really even dove into anatomy at all, is Habib Akonde, who's a man and who's wonderful. And he even addresses, why is a man talking about female,
Exactly.
knows his lane. And he's like, and I'm still an sex educator, and so this is what I have to say, I'm a researcher. And I thought, how valuable to also have a woman on who owns these body parts, to talk about what each of the body parts do. And one of the things that she told me, which I found so fascinating, because we're talking about squirting, which of course is the episode I did with Habib.
Right.
And she said that there's still doctors, in fact one female doctor, that's saying that squirting doesn't exist, it's just urine and all of this stuff. And she's like, it's so damaging to women. And she said, we only discovered 12 years ago, I think she said it was 12 years ago, that there is a female prostate. And these what did she say, we'll talk about it next week, but
Oh my God, I'm so excited about this episode.
oh yeah, and she found out, like, the part of the reason they found out that there is a female prostate gland, which is where the ejaculation fluid comes from, is because a woman came in with cancer of her prostate. So they found it because it had developed cancer. And so they're like, it does exist, and there's these little fluid sacs that are around the urethra that fill up with fluid, and that is the female, ejaculation.
Yeah,
So,
Rhea is just so amazing.
but how do we not know this stuff, Kirti? Like, how do we not, like, it's not like 12 years ago, we're in 2021. Think of all the technology, like we've sent.
Well, I mean, they also thought the vagus nerve just ran from the head down near the heart and right back up into the brain for a long time, because they were just like, yeah, they just thought it couldn't have to do with the spine. So I think, yeah, and this is the thing is, but we have so many ancient texts. I bet you there are probably ancient texts that show this about the female anatomy. You know what I'm saying? And I bet you our indigenous brothers and sisters, just like with the vagus nerve, like you can see old diagrams where they are clearly showing that this exists, that this nerve is here and it does lots of phenomenal things. Just like we can look into old cave paintings and we see them showing energy balls around bodies, like energy and beings around. Just like we can go into old ancient Egyptian paintings and we see them carrying pine cones to symbolize the pineal gland. I mean, they knew clearly, somehow, accessing what is going on inside of our body,
Well,
whatever way they did it.
intuitively, they're picking up on the energy. It's like whenever I'm going to see you. I'm driving down and I'm thinking a thought. And then I get to wherever we're meeting and you say exactly what I was thinking about. And I'm like, damn it, Kirti, you do it every time. Like you read my
Well,
mind.
it's crazy you talked about evil today. Like, see,
Mhm.
you can't make this shit up. Just yesterday in group therapy, they were breaking it down about the concept of evil and Lucifer. And like I wrote in the chat, like, isn't it interesting that evil backwards spells live and devil backwards spells lived? Like, why is it that we always look and to the places that make us feel afraid? But what if we were to actually see that, like, to live, this is a part of that journey. Like whatever we might think is shadow is actually, it's not so bad.
It's
Um,
the humanness. And even like you're saying with the ego is sometimes good. It's like we have to be in the ego to live in this world and to get some shit done. But it's like excessive ego, right? When it's like all about ego without the balance of the other.
what did we say in Tulum? Like, I'm the most humble,
Yeah, what was that?
I'm the most humble, cocky person, or the most humble, egoic person. I forget.
Remember, like I have the most humble brags or something like
Yeah,
I don't
like
remember what it was,
you
but
got to be your biggest fan, but be humble about it.
I'm the best at being humble. That's what it was. I'm the
That's what it was. I'm the best at being humble. Yeah, I think that that's really, that's a good way of remembering, like, we just, and the duality piece. I mean, you talked about it a little bit with religion. It just needs to be unwinded. Just needs to be unwinded. Um,
Yeah. So noticing, and it's like whatever we're tuning into, and like you said with the duality, if you're in the duality, it's like you're more tuned into this side, or you're more tuned into that side. That's when you get into trouble. But in Habib, I love this word that he uses, medical machismo. In the medical machismo culture, it's like so tuned in to this maybe masculine mechanics, or just these what you can see and you can't, the pieces that you can't see, you don't even, like the thing with the vagus nerve, we don't know how that works. We still don't fully know how
right.
the microbiome communicates, to the brain. We know it communicates to the vagus nerve. We know it communicates to these bacterial colonies, but there's multiple pathways that it communicates.
Right.
We're like, we still don't know how these microbiome colonies work. And it's like, no wonder that we can't figure out how to make life work on this planet either. Like everybody's arguing, but shit.
We can't get colonies of people to work.
Yeah, but it's all, it's all like interconnected. And so I'm excited about next week. I'm excited to introduce everyone to Tara and have her, educate us on some of the female anatomy and how we can feel more empowered in sexual, just by knowing what our bodies do and what it's there for, and what parts are there. And
Yes.
I think it's very
Mm,
exciting.
yeah, it's gonna be
So it's about 8:30. I guess it's a good time to wrap up. We usually go a little bit longer when the two of us get together. Lots to say. Is there anything that you want to invite folks to right now? What do you got going on?
right now I think everything that we're doing is kind of for our clients and our client base. But if you want to learn about any of what we're doing, you can always go to my website, they'llsayculture.com, or to my partner's website, Fosho Energy Work. And we're always putting together, programs and doing things like that. And even though we're not on Instagram, I think our friends still sometimes post pictures of us and things that we're doing. So it's out there in the
I
ether,
thought
in the interwebs.
okay.
And yeah, you can also you can still go and see all my links from my page there. Yeah, you can still get connected to me in whatever I'm doing. I honestly, just like when I chose to leave, I chose to leave, but I do know it does connect you to my website. But yeah, I mean, the biggest public thing I have going on right now is my Sunday classes. And if you feel ready to move your body and be in nature and start to look at this work, um, yeah, for me, it starts with the body and kind of ends with the body. So that intrigues you, yeah, reach out to me. I'm here. You can find me through Natasha too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I go to that class every Sunday. Uh, I love it. It keeps me in shape. It keeps me um, in shape mentally, physically, all of it. It's really beautiful. And Kirti offers something a little bit different each time. So you never really know what you're going to get. But I love anything that is that efficient, because you have earthing, you have sunshine. I get my
Yeah.
vitamin D. There's community. There's the outdoors. There's fresh air. There's movement. There's music. There's beats. It's just like all of that all in one
Mm.
efficient hour. That's my style. Like as a single mom, like PhD student, whatever. It's like that's how things have to get done. And so I just adore that class. So thank you so much for creating that space and offering it.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
if you haven't heard yet, looks like California is opening back up very soon. I don't know
Yeah.
when we get the full
Mm.
release, but I also heard that Gavin Newsom is like 300,000 signatures away from being recalled. So the business owners are speaking, and so he's like, "Well, maybe we should end the lockdown." So I think that has something to do with it. But a
The
lot of us
breweries in San Diego ain't having it.
so we'll be doing some form of opening back up again for, so that opens up events, and I will be
Yay.
doing another past life regression circle
Ooh.
March 12th. It's on my
Cool.
website.
Okay.
So natashaedwina.com for anybody that's watching. I also have a newsletter there. You can check out what I'm doing there. And because it's Mercury retrograde, extra treats. I brought back bedtime meditation, which is where this all started, Kirti. I was doing
Oh, that's
meditation
right.
the first time I ever hung out with you, and we went hiking, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
we got to get down to the mountain because I have to go live at 9. So was able to have a couple of guests on that, and that kind of paved the way for this show. So I'm doing this now at 7 on Mondays, and then Tuesday and Friday at 7 is bedtime meditation right here on YouTube Live.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah,
Very
just a
cool.
little extra content, a little extra thing for people to join in on, and I'm sure
Yeah.
lots of other collaborations. I really love the community and the tribe that we've built and that we continue to build, and
Mm.
the collaborations, the offerings, and everybody kind of bringing their own medicine and their own magic, and it's been really lovely.
Yeah, I do think the future is communal. I mean, way
Yes.
more. And I think that's probably why we're getting so isolated right now, is so that we get really hungry for connection and community. And yeah, we doing it, man.
We're
Head
doing
on.
it. And thank you to you, Goddess. It's always a pleasure. And I definitely look forward to the next time.
Awesome. I love you.
I love you too.
Peace.
See you soon. Bye.